what's basically going on here is we have a huge industry. I mean, by some counts, a multi-$100 billion industry. It's been around forever. There's lots of inefficiencies in the market. And there's been, until last year, almost no outside professional investment into the field. And there's lots of dissatisfaction. Even if you only look at those elements, you can conclude that there's a pretty high likelihood that there is room to deliver something better to this market.
Today on Law Next, talking with Augie Rakow, the co-founder and chairman of Atrium, an alternative model of a law firm delivering legal services to startups. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to Law Next, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. We'll get to today's interview in just a moment. But first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support Law Next. And now, on to this week's interview. Augie Rakow, welcome to Law Next.
Thank you. Nice to be with you. I like your. I'm a subscriber and avid listener to your podcast.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored to hear that. And also thank you for hosting me here in your office in San Francisco today. So it's great to be able to be here in the room as opposed to talking over a Skype call or something else. It also happens coincidentally to be just about 2 years exactly to the day from the time Atrium launched. Yeah. It was April of 2017 that you guys started. What was the original concept? What were you trying to do here?
Yeah. So Justin really had the original idea.
Justin Kahn.
My co-founder Justin Kahn had the way he tells the stories. He had been starting and running companies in Silicon Valley for over a decade, and saw that he had become a involuntary power user of law firms. His phrase for it. And what puzzled him about his experience with the law firms, wasn't really a lot of the cynicism that you kind of hear in a lot of the legal tech and legal entrepreneur market. But it really came from more of a puzzlement that the law firms weren't behaving like businesses. Not necessarily that he was getting bad experiences or overcharged. It may have been that, but that wasn't the thrust of it. The thrust of it was really, as a business phenomenon, it's odd that the law firms don't systematically track leads, systematically pursue leads, systematically follow up with clients to get feedback on the experience. The whole kind of idea of corporate idea of like continuous improvement was, he could tell as a customer that wasn't present in law firms, or not in the same degree, or it was missing in a way that was puzzling to him. Yeah. And he had the insight that one of the large root causes for that is a structural thing, which I've talked about previously, but a structural point that, at least in the United States, there's no market for a law firm partner's law firm equity. There's really no place you can't build up the value of your law firm and plan to sell it to a company or to even another law firm. Really, you might merge, but that's different. You have to continue to provide. You can't. There's not really an asset that you can build the value up and sell it. It doesn't mean you're not
because of the way the law firms handle profits and earnings. Basically, they don't build equity in the firm.
And the reason they don't build equity isn't because they're bad business people or because they're not thinking long term. It's because structurally there is nobody they can sell that equity to other than other lawyers, and that's a very diminished market, very reduced market. Add to that the fact that you're doing business through a tax-free, untaxed pass-through entity. Any cash that collects in the company, in the law firm's bank accounts at the end of the fiscal year, the partners are going to pay tax, and their families are going to pay tax on that, even if it's not distributed out to them. And so you're talking about any reinvestment would be reinvestment of post-tax dollars into an entity that you can't sell to anybody. Right. And so that seriously dampens the motivation to build a business, and that dampens the ability to raise capital, set goals, and pursue those goals in sort of across the organization, a broad organization-wide, structured analytical way. Right. And that insight was really what drove. Yeah,
but that restriction exists because of regulatory restrictions on who can invest in law practices and who can own law practices.
That is the root cause.
Yeah. So what have you tried to do with Atrium to essentially get around that regulatory restriction?
Yeah. So
is that a fair way to characterize it? I mean, if that regulation didn't exist, would Atrium exist?
We think so. I think that it would be it would be an easier path, a more straightforward path. The business model would be more straightforward and intelligible and accessible to people if every law firm out there could just raise money into a law firm from investors and kind of pursue their business plan, use that money towards their operational goals to build their law firm businesses. if you could just do that, if any law firm could go out and raise money into the law firm, it would be much easier to contemplate that as one possible strategic choice. It'd be easier for law firm managers to contemplate that. And so I do think that the sort of complex structure that we've had to adopt, we didn't invent it. ClearSpire did it. There were other law firm businesses in our Y Combinator batch when we went through. There were several firms out there focused on patents and other kinds of things. So we've adopted that approach as a way to bring money into the business. But there are other ways to do it, and if the regulations open up, then it'll be available to other people. Yeah. But in the time since we thought of that and have and raised the money and have been running this business, we've learned so many other additional tools that are available to differentiate a law firm that is really run systematically like a business with professional management. Yeah.
Well, we can talk about that, but just describe for anybody who maybe isn't familiar, what is the model when you say ClearSpire and others have done it? What is it that you've done here? How have you structured this?
Yeah. So the model is that we're legally two different entities. There's a Delaware C corporation, which is the typical vehicle for raising venture capital and building a startup. And that is the entity that we raised money into. There's also a regular California LLP law firm that houses the lawyers as well as the some of the more sensitive business functions that need to be more supervised directly by lawyers. That's all housed in the law firm entity. And the two entities are joined by a commercial agreement. And we try to act as a single unified company with a unified culture and we're in more or less the same building, and we have more or less have, for the most part have lunch together and play together and kind of do those kinds of things. Yeah. And then we're sort of Nazis about the couple things that we need to be Nazis about for regulatory purposes, like client information, client confidential information, and client fees.
And how's the ownership structured around that?
Yeah. So the law firm entity is owned by a couple partners. Presently, it's myself and co-founder Bebe, who we launched the law firm side together. We're in the process of adding. We just announced 2 new partners who'll be joining the partnership this year. That was in the press a couple months ago, maybe a month ago. And then and those are the only owners of the law firm. On the Delaware C Corp side, we have a pretty long list of investors. Also, many senior members of the legal team have small equity stakes in the tech company.
Yeah, I mean, you've attracted some $75 million total funding, right? So far, 65 last year, not just a few months ago, really, not that long ago,
right?
And 10 million before that. And you've attracted some pretty big names, sort of Silicon Valley investment firms to take an interest in this. I mean, what is it that you think that they see in this that attracted them?
Yeah. So Justin is in closer touch with the investor community and led the fundraising and is better speaking generally about how investors look at opportunities. But what's basically going on here is we have a huge industry. I mean, by some counts, a multi-$100 billion industry. It's been around forever. There's lots of inefficiencies in the market. And there's been, until last year, almost no outside professional investment into the field. And there's lots of dissatisfaction. Even if you only look at those elements, you can conclude that there's a pretty high likelihood that there is room to deliver something better to this market. Add to that the fact that you have a serial entrepreneur with a great track record who's managed and built many successful companies, plus a active, professional, accomplished lawyer who believes in who is on board with the vision. That combination is just very rare. And when I was looking at this as an opportunity for myself, really one of the distinctive kind of facts was the fact that someone like Justin was interested in solving this problem.
Yeah, you were at Orrick, and you left. You were a partner at Orrick, and you left that to come here.
Yeah, I had a great practice. I basically think of myself as a law firm lawyer. Yeah. I went to back to school later in life, and it's kind of, that's how I think of myself, a law firm lawyer. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I mean, I whenever in my own mind when I've thought about Atrium, I tend to emphasize the technology side of it in my thinking about it, that this is a company that's exploiting the power of technology to deliver services more efficiently. But you don't see it that way, right? You see it a little bit differently than that?
Well, no, we definitely deliver services more efficiently. But, well, in the sense of, maybe elaborate on the question.
Well, I think what you've said is I think you've said this to me, and I may have misheard you, that you, while the technology part of it is an important part of what you're doing here, the technology part of it isn't necessarily the key to solving the delivery of legal services.
Yeah, I think the focus on technology can really distract people from the bigger picture. And I think that if they're trying to solve a technology problem without a bigger picture, I think I'm generally not very optimistic that it's going to make a big dent. Yeah. And what I mean by the bigger picture is, I think the more fundamental thing is, are you organizing as a business with specific goals, and are those goals socialized across your organization? And do you all have sort of goals and sub goals that feed up together in a specific strategic direction, other than just provide excellent service or be excellent lawyers or something? Like, do you have a specific goal that you are rationally as a team pursuing? When you have, if the answer to that is yes, then you can say, well, what do we have at our disposal to pursue that goal? We can invest in lots of different things. We can invest in marketing. We can invest in sales. We can invest in training. We can invest in culture. We can invest in technology. We can invest in all these different things. I think it's a mistake to say every solution should have a technology, because there's so little software in law today. We should go after all problems with a software solution. That's a kind of thinking that I see very, very predominant in both in law firms and in the kind of legal tech community that always bugs me. And so that's what I mean when I'm saying that the technology is really one tool you have to pursue a business goal, and it's whether you have actually a business goal or you're just all showing up and working. That's the big difference. Yeah,
and perhaps thinking more creatively about the way you operate, the way you do business as well.
Yeah, I mean, you have a goal, and what do we have available to achieve that goal?
Yeah. You mentioned ClearSpire, which was it early founded back in 2010 as a similar kind of a structure. Mm-hmm. The idea that it was going to be two separate companies, one driving the sort of the back end operations and one being the law practice. ClearSpire lasted 4 years and went out of business. Yeah. I mean, when you were starting when you were starting the Atrium group, did you look back at ClearSpire and did you consciously try and do things differently than they did?
Yeah, for about the first year or so, we had the ClearSpire story printed out and on a coffee table in the waiting room. So we were all very much aware of it.
Mark Cohen's tome on the history of it.
Yeah. And we spoke with Mark early on, learned some lessons. I think this is a big, complicated problem, and there's going to be lots of people taking swings at it, lots of failures, lots of successes. The fact that one had tried it and had failed in one way was a very interesting data point, an interesting thing to learn from. But I definitely did not take it as like a verdict on sort of the viability of doing something big in this area.
Yeah. So, but did you consciously do anything different, or just think that maybe the timing was different, or the investment scene was different, or?
Yeah. Well, we didn't talk with him before we started, so there was no conscious differentiation. But I do think that one of the hallmarks of how we started Atrium was pretty different from one of the hallmarks of how they started ClearSpire, according to Mark, when we spoke with him. We have really tried, and I think this is something we've done very, very well. We've tried very hard to not fall too hard into kind of preconceived ideas about what the market wants in terms of product and offerings and things like that. As Mark tells a story, and I'm only say that because I have no direct experience with ClearSpire than talking to Mark.
Yeah.
But it sounds like what they did was they raised capital, hold themselves up, built a product that they thought would be fantastic, and then went out to the market and then learned that the product wasn't really what the market wanted. We've taken a very different approach. Our approach has been, let's start providing service. We hired thoroughbred lawyers from all the top firms and paralegals. We know how to serve these clients. Let's start getting that revenue. Let's start getting reps, just onboarding a client, serving a client, invoicing and collecting from, just kind of going through the basic. Let's get those reps in with dozens and dozens and hundreds of instances, and then let's layer in technology as we see business problems emerging that we can solve with technology solutions. And so it's been much more of a bottoms up, kind of a lean startup approach.
We'll get back to my interview in just a moment, but first, let's take a break to hear from the sponsors who generously support Law Next. And now, let's continue this week's interview. Over the 2 years that you've been operating Atrium now, what have you learned during that time that's maybe caused you to change course a little bit or refine how you're operating?
Oh, there's so many things. I mean, every day. One of the biggest was really just an understanding that that you can use software or other innovations as well to create value in lots of ways other than just improving efficiency. So you can provide new kinds of value that a human can't provide. You can provide dashboards and project status trackers and things that'll enable the client to access information that they want, even like their documents, more easily than they could otherwise. So there's a whole set of things that you do that add value as opposed to just reducing the cost or shortening the time. And that value is ideally it's value that you're providing even when you're not on the phone with them or writing memos for them or things like that. So you provide a kind of continuous source of value to that client. That's been a very big learning. That's been somewhat kind of not exactly what we had expected. That's a big one. We also have learned that clients really do. A lot of people are going to hate hearing this. But I believe that clients, not only the kinds of clients we're serving today, like the early stage startup CEOs and things like that, but also GCs at larger companies, prefer to purchase legal from a business person than to purchase from a lawyer. That's a contentious statement. It's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. There are certainly exceptions. There are certainly lawyers out there who have a really great interface. But even apart from that interface, what good lawyers will give pragmatic legal advice, but very few lawyers, almost none, have experience building a legal function as a business function thinking in terms of what kind of talent do I need to hire? What kind of budget do I need to prepare? What kind of processes do I need to put in place to procure pragmatic legal solutions over and over and over again across a broad range of areas? That's building a legal function within a company. That's different from providing pragmatic business-oriented advice on any specific legal issue. Yeah. And so because lawyers, even if they have that ability to provide pragmatic business advice, they have never been in the GC's situation of thinking in terms of quarterly budgets, monthly budgets, year-long budgets. Giving up a GC visibility about the cost on a specific project is very different from working with that GC to provide a broader set of solutions to the broad range of things that they're trying to solve as they build their legal organization. Right. And when I say that even GCs would prefer to purchase from a business person, they would prefer to, I think that many GCs would, if not most, would prefer to purchase from someone who thinks like a procurement person and can talk procurement in procurement terms with them. Yeah. Then you get into the specific legal issue. But if you unless you're talking kind of in procurement terms, in terms of cost, in terms of ROI, in terms of goals, in terms of time, that kind of stuff, then you're not really you're giving the GC something that they then have to translate for the rest of their company. Yeah.
So do clients see engaging with Atrium as buying from a business person as opposed to buying from a lawyer?
Definitely.
Are there lessons there for traditional law firms? I mean, Atrium is a different business structure, but what about the way that you're serving clients carries over into the
absolutely lots of things
real world of practicing law? The traditional world of practicing law.
There's lots of things. Some of the big categories are how do you do sales and marketing, and do you need a lot of law firms have marketing departments, but when you get into the actual sale and kind of that funnel of converting a prospect into a qualified lead, converting a lead into a closed client, collecting payment, that whole set there. Non-lawyers can learn how to do that very effectively. Smart, sophisticated salespeople can learn how to do that. Even if they're junior, can learn how to do that much more quickly than I think most lawyers give them credit. Yeah. We have sales folks supervised by the lawyers who are crushing it. I mean, they have really proven. It's phenomenal to watch. That's one area.
Yeah.
A second, and I think any law firm could go much further in doing that. Yeah. I think there's cultural issues and management issues and there's lots of challenges, but I think any law firm that's equipped to do that should explore that. The second area, it's related, is around account management. There's all different kind of flavors of account management. It can be kind of passive, almost like a billing coordinator at a traditional law firm, to something much more proactive, really maintaining the relationship and owning the relationship anywhere in that spectrum. And I believe that most law firms can dramatically improve their client experience, as well as their legal team's productivity, as well as retaining their talent at their law firm, if they pursue something along that spectrum, somewhere between having the billing coordinator actually in communication with the client, making sure that they understand the bill and that kind of very, very minimal account management, up through periodic check-ins and making new announcements to the client, and maybe even things like project management, assisting with the project management, all the way up to potentially owning the relationship. Which is scary for a lot of law firms to think about. But I think that that's something that can be extremely beneficial even for a traditional law firm, and that every law firm should experiment with somewhere on that spectrum.
Yeah.
A last category I would say is around what we call business operations, which is really kind of like an internal consultants, looking at how we're operating, where we're making money, where we're doing the same thing over and over again, where we're kind of an internal analytical look, not just for the major accounts, for the major rainmakers, but throughout the whole operation. That's another area that I think every law firm can improve by experimenting with that. And there's several others, but those are the top ones that come to mind.
Yeah. When it comes down to the actual legal services that you're delivering, how would they not look like what you were doing at Orrick, or what another law firm might be doing? What's different, if anything, about the way that you're delivering the services?
So around a lot of things around the edges to make the interaction smoother. I would say the core thing of, for example, you have 3 term sheets, 3 different. You're a startup. You went out. You've been been pitching investors, and you have 3 term sheets, and you're trying to figure out which one to go with and what are the pros and cons of each. That's human expertise. Yeah. And I think it will be a long, long time before that is completely replaced. Will that be Will the advice that the lawyer at Atrium, the advice that the lawyer gives in that situation is backed up by a lot of data we collect data on everything. So we have data on other term sheets, other investors, all at our fingertips. I would collect data like that when I know lawyers do that at traditional firms as well, but it's more of a brute force kind of thing. Let's look at a bunch of term sheets, pull out the data, compile it ourselves, and present it to the client. We've brought a lot of automation to that process. So all the millions of documents that we have, we've extracted key information from lots of those documents. We've identified trends, and so it's more of a data supported advice that the lawyer can give. So a lot of times the experience may not be different, but it's backed up by something different. Around the edges, you'll have things like scheduling a call with your lawyer, or finding out availability, or checking on your bill, or things like that. And I would call those kind of interface level, kind of user interface level kinds of innovations. And we have dashboards and things like that that do a lot of the kind of heavy lifting of just keeping the client updated on basic stuff. Yeah. Often as a practitioner, that's something you kind of remember as you're falling asleep and you shouldn't note to a client. And we try to reduce the burden on the lawyer to just remember to update their client on stuff.
Yeah. Why did you decide to focus on startups to begin with as sort of the core client base you were going to go after?
Yeah, there's a few reasons. One is it's an area that I know and that Justin knows. So we know that market. It's an area that I think is probably feeling the sort of anachronism of modern law the most. Very technical, forward-looking founders. They're also very young.
Yeah.
That's a big reason. And then third thing is it's a tried and true strategy to serve great startups and grow with them. Yeah. You get Facebook early, you grow with it. You get Google early, you grow with it. That's a not only for law firms, but for enterprise software companies, for all different other kinds of companies as well.
Yeah. I spoke to you right around the time you founded Atrium, or at least publicly announced Atrium. And at that time, you said the long-term plan was to become a multi-service law firm serving a breadth of clients. What's your vision now? What's the plan longer term?
That's still true. I would say that we've sharpened our focus on the type of client we're serving, as opposed to the way I articulated it back then. Multi-practice law firm, it's kind of a supply side description. What do we want to have available to offer to people? We want to have a tax department. We want to have a regulatory department. We want to have an Africa team. We want to have a M&A. We want to. It was a supply side view of it. We've gotten much more focused on the client that we're serving, that client profile, and then what do we need in order to serve them is more a secondary question. The question flows from that.
Right.
So that's changed. That's changed, but that's more of a focus and a clarification than an improvement than a really fundamental change.
I mean, are there obstacles that you see or that you maybe didn't expect 2 years ago that are make it harder for you to get to that goal?
There are obstacles that I thought were going to be obstacles that have been removed. And it'd be fun to share some of those with you. Obstacles that we had not been. Let me share a couple that we thought were going to be obstacles. Those are really fun, and those are actually more of those are coming to mind. We had a legitimate question about whether companies would even hire a startup a new law firm. That was one question, and that has not been an issue.
Yeah, I think that was maybe part of ClearSpire's problem. Also, was just that it was so unproven that it was clients were not comfortable with it.
Right. I think that's less of an issue with startup clients. That's kind of back to your question, why startups? Because startups they assume something new is must be better.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a different mindset.
Another thing was, we had wondered if like a billable model was inherently like a billable hour model was inherently more lucrative because you have overruns and you retain some portion of those overruns. We were worried that we would learn that lesson. We would learn that it's actually better to be on a billable hour, and I would say that's a lesson we did not want to learn, and did not want a truth we did not want to confirm to see was true. And it's we backed off that concern. That's not as
How do
much
you
of a
bill?
concern. Almost all of our clients are on subscription models. So it's a base subscription layer that involves a certain scope of work, kind of everything that would come up kind of day to day. One thing it includes is unlimited phone calls. Surprise, surprise, clients don't abuse that.
Yeah. They're not calling you every 5 minutes with the.
So few of them do. You have 100 clients, one does that. I mean, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
And if they are doing that, there's probably other issues. Maybe there's a coaching opportunity that's you can connect them with mentors and things that we have in our network about how to fundraise or whatever is on their mind.
Yeah.
Another thing that we've learned pleasantly is that I thought it would take longer to go after later stage clients. I just thought it would take longer for us to start getting that attention and getting those pitches and winning them. And we have a pretty good betting record for. I can't disclose specifically who the clients are and stuff like that, but that concern is just disappearing.
Yeah.
Another thing we thought was that I really expected like a day one panic. My one of the biggest concerns on day one when we opened was that I didn't have enough specialists on hand to give an experience to clients that we could be proud of.
Yeah.
We could tell them that the scope is limited and convince them to come and work with us on this limited scope. But I thought that when we got into the day to day, we were just going to be apologizing all the time that we don't have this, we don't have that. Not at all. I found that one, getting out of the big law firm, I saw how many talented, sophisticated practitioners there are out there in the community at half the hourly rate. Now it takes some effort to go find them and roll them up, so to speak. But it's very doable. And there were lots of very talented specialists who were very eager to work with us. And I found that I thought you would need to have the person down the hall in order to get the kind of responsiveness that you need. Turned out to be not the case at all. That was very surprising. So we've gone much lighter on hiring internal specialists than we thought we were going to need to in the beginning. Yeah, that's been a wonderful lesson to learn.
Yeah,
frustrations that have come up. We do not have any kind of ongoing major existential threats that have been a concern for more than a month or two.
Yeah,
we've been able to work through most of the stuff. We're not fundamentally asking people to change their behavior. We're not asking people to not own a car. We're not asking people to communicate in 140 characters. We're not asking we're not asking for fundamental changes in the client's behavior.
Yeah. Has you ever had a concern that about bar regulatory authorities that anybody would want to talk to you or look into what you're doing? Or?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say I was most concerned when I knew the least. And as I spoke with more and more specialists, it seemed like the more experience people had in that area, the more they were telling us, "Hey, what you're doing is not actually that aggressive."
Yeah. So the revenue for the Atrium Group all comes from the legal services that you provide.
Yes.
The technology company, Atrium,
LTS,
Legal Technology Services, LTS, has built technology, as I understand it, to help.
Yeah, one of the first things we built was an inventory management system, kind of to keep track of work we were doing.
Yeah.
To count it.
Yeah.
How many NDAs did we review?
Yeah.
How many offer letters did we review?
Yeah.
And count it and invoice for it. Yeah.
Is that something that you would productize at some point and take to the market at some point?
We could.
I mean, is that part of the plan? Or
there are. I would say that there are product. I think we will make things available to other law firms and legal departments more out of when there's a strategic motivation for us rather than a pure revenue motivation. I think that we're not really looking we're not trying to build that sort of document management system that's going to replace NetDocs and iManage for all the other law firms. That's a whole other level of kind of product focus that needs to go into researching that market, researching the competition, developing channels for selling. It's a different business.
Yeah.
However, if we have a really good, easy way for specialists to collaborate, or for people, we may make that available to make it easier for specialists to work with us and support our clients.
Yeah. I mean, what's the payoff, if that's the right word, that the investors see in putting money into Atrium? I mean, where do they see this as, leading for them?
Well, I mean, we're going to build a profitable business. That's
all from providing legal services, not from ancillary sales or technology.
I think we want to provide full stack solutions to clients. A lot of times that does involve ancillary services. A lot of times that does involve giving them a platform that they can continue to drive value from, even when they're not on the phone with us or we're drafting a memo for them or something like that. So I think of the software, yes, is driving down the cost, but a lot of it is driving down the transaction cost of like finding the specialist or finding your lawyer or booking a call with them. Or there's sort of these things that are it's not just can we increase the speed of collecting signatures, or can we increase it, which we've made a lot of, we do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think what's really sexy is the ability to use software to create a broader environment, a broader platform that someone can come in and that a client can join, and then it reduces our client acquisition cost or client retention costs over time. I think that's where the real opportunity is to be able to, because if you think about it, someone was at the Hastings panel the other day. Someone commented that they thought that if the regulatory framework is opened up, that there'll be a consolidation. All the big firms will just get bigger. There are no big firms in this market in legal. I mean, there are no big firms.
What do you mean by that?
Companies spend a lot of companies spend about 300. I forget the exact number quoted. $300 billion, $150 billion a year on law firms. Let's say companies spend $150 billion a year on law firms. The largest law firms by revenue have about 1.5% of that.
So you mean there's no single dominant player in the industry? Yeah.
Yeah. From a market fragmentation perspective, the largest firms are about 1.5% of the market. It's crazy. It's crazy how fragmented it is.
Yeah.
And so if you can use software to scale management processes and to scale client acquisition and to make internal communications more efficient and to do things so that you can achieve a kind of scale that is triple or quadruple that's very valuable.
Yeah. So do you think the market is open if there is some degree of deregulation for somebody to come out of left field and really kind of dominate the market?
I don't spend much time thinking about deregulation. It has no impact on anything I think about. So, I think
it would change your business structure, wouldn't it? I mean, you wouldn't have to be two separate entities anymore.
We wouldn't, but I don't. I guess it's an intellectual moat to people because it's intellectually it's more to wrap your mind around.
Yeah. It doesn't affect the way you do things.
I think of that like. To me, that seemed critical and huge and decisive when we first started out.
Yeah.
Now that feels like just knowing how to type. Yeah. It's like table set. That's like it gets you to the starting line.
Yeah.
There's so many decisions to do to make well or poorly after that. That one thing is not. If we were hanging our hat on that as our protection or as our moat, it would be a pretty lame business. I think.
Yeah. You've talked about a little bit about some of the long-term goals here. What's the next big challenge for Atrium? What's the next big thing you want to do or accomplish here?
We want to dominate our initial market. I mean, this initial market, this startup market, we have it defined more specifically. We aren't talking about it publicly yet, but we want to clobber this market and show that it can be done.
Yeah. Is that subscription model extensible to other areas of practice?
I think absolutely. Yeah. The challenge isn't finding what is it that almost all clients need monthly or so. What's some set of things? Maybe it's information. Maybe it's just information. Maybe it's different for different practices.
Right. Yeah.
So it's harder for practice. Yeah, definitely harder for practices where it's more episodic and periodic.
Litigation or something.
Yeah. But even then, a big litigation client's going to have multiple things going on. Right. Litigation lasts multiple years. Multiple years. So I think there's lots of opportunity there.
Yeah. Augie, let me give you the last word. We're just about out of time here, but anything else you'd like to mention or talk about or raise? Yeah,
I would say I've been going out more to conferences and kind of seeing what's going on more broadly in the legal business sector, and there is a lot more change than there was 2 years ago, is my impression. A lot more investment, a lot more innovative business models. I think we've contributed a little bit to some of that attention. My message to practitioners, people coming out of law school, anybody who's kind of thinking about how to build their career in legal, is to look around at these different models and see how you can apply that in some new area. There's going to be an Atrium for wills and trusts. There's going to be an Atrium for specialized markets, just like with regular law firms that specialize in certain markets. There's so much opportunity out there, so much opportunity to do things better and redesign things from the ground up. I would encourage you, I'm going to pass on advice that I got from someone in my first year of practice. Don't be afraid to be entrepreneurial in the law. There's so much opportunity. Amen to that. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I really enjoyed it. Nice to talk with you. Thanks for meeting. We've been talking with Augie Rakow, the chairman and one of the co-founders of Atrium, the Atrium Group, we'll call it. Thanks a lot. Thank you. And thanks to the sponsors who keep this show running.